in order to really develop the team and the organization, you have to deliver value consistently. So whether I'm doing a formal consultation with a healthcare company, or whether, and this happens a lot, as you might imagine, people just call me up and say, hey, I'd love to pick your brain on this topic. Can we talk? And I routinely share time with folks because we're all trying to make this place, better. Right. So I think the combination of building strong teams, having a good workflow in place, and then ultimately being good at sharing your thoughts and ideas with others really helps you get to the right spot.
Welcome to the Risk Never Sleeps podcast, in which we learn about the people that are on the front lines delivering and protecting patient care. I'm Ed Gaudet, the host of our program, and today I am pleased to have Lee Milligan, Senior Vice President and CIO of SimonMed Imaging, on with us. Welcome, Lee.
Good to see you, Ed. Happy to be on the show.
Yeah, excellent. So you've got a great background. Obviously, you've done a lot of work in healthcare over the years. Tell us about your current role in your organization, the current organization you're part of.
So that's recently changed. I'm not sure if you and I connected on this or not. I recently left my last organization at SimonMed, and I'm now, I actually launched a small consulting company called Asbury Health Tech Partners. Focused primarily on optimizing the technology that's in place and really creating a pathway forward for how health systems can consolidate the many different things that are on their plate. So the example, one of the big projects I'm working on now with the health system in the West is consolidating their imaging. They've got 18 different packs. That's not an exaggeration. And many of them are very antiquated, but folks are used to the workflows associated with their scenario. And so getting everybody on board, identifying stakeholders, creating a RACI chart, understanding the workflows that are documented, then crafting out kind of a pathway forward that makes sense for the organization. That's more of a unified approach to imaging. That's one of the areas that I'm working on.
I love that. So how long have you been doing this new job?
It's fairly recent. So started about 2 months ago.
And tell us about the name. How did you come up with the name?
Yeah. So that's actually the name of the grammar school that I went to here in Pennsylvania. And I'll tell you just briefly, I get the Reader's Digest version. It was the greatest grammar school. It had right next to it, the Asbury Sanctuary, which was basically a woods. And so when I was in grammar school, twice a week, they would take us for hikes in the woods. And to this day, I spend a lot of time outdoors, do a lot of hiking, and I attribute most of that to my time at Asbury.
You took the path less traveled.
Yeah.
I had to work in poetry there. So
that's right. That's right.
Well, when I think of Asbury, I think of Bruce Springsteen. So
yes. Yes. And I'm a fan also, but
good.
For a different name.
Okay, good. Well, we'll get to music in a bit. And that's great. You get to go into these new places and you get to sort of look at all these challenges and construct strategies and I'm sure a lot of change and transformation goes into that. How is it different being on the other side?
I think one of the advantages I have going into these situations is my medical background. So, I practiced medicine for a long time. I mean, it was the real deal, right in the trenches in the emergency department for many years. I'm a board certified residency trained ER physician from UCLA. And so I did it for a long time. So when we come into these conversations, it's not like just a consultant's coming in and saying, hey, you should do things differently. I can have very honest conversations with arguably the most prickly stakeholders at the table.
No, not arguably. Well, they have a mission and they don't want anything to get in the way of the mission. So technology gets in the way.
And the technology folks who are bringing me in, they're grateful that they have somebody, I think, who can have that difficult conversation because, when they're talking about change, they're putting their own scenario at risk, right? And they know that. And so having somebody can come in, have those conversations and kind of be that buffer, while at the same time kind of mapping out a reasonable pathway forward that usually involves choices with upsides and downsides to each of those choices, I think is really helpful for them.
I remember when I was at Imprivata, I was coming into healthcare for the first time, and
Hmm.
we're sitting at this table with a bunch of CIOs, and I got to ask the stupid question. So I asked about, how does the clinician talk about single sign-on? And they
Oh
kind of
yeah.
laughed and they rolled their eyes. And I'm like, what? Well, what's so funny? Oh, they talk about saving clicks. And I was just like, the light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. Like saving clicks. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
Very
such
practical.
it's very practical. It's a different language, and being able to bridge those two worlds must be really important and beneficial for you.
Huge value to the folks I've been interacting with. I kind of knew it in the back of my head, but it's really come to fruition as I've been taking on these projects.
Great, great. How did you get into healthcare?
My history is a little bit funky. So I wasn't your typical pre-med guy. I came out of high school with a 2.0 GPA.
Whoa.
And
Overachiever.
yes,
But you probably had fun like me in high school.
I was
right?
achieving something. It just
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
good.
that's right. We're always
Yeah.
achieving something.
And I actually went to college right out of high school and did terrible and basically flunked out. And so
Yeah.
I took some time off and I worked in a variety of jobs. I worked for Beacons Corporation, moving people.
Hmm.
I worked at the Gap for a while. I worked for a law firm out of San Diego called Latham and Watkins. I was the mail boy. And eventually I got a job as a summer camp counselor in east of San Diego at a place called Camp Cuyamaca. And that camp has two different types of kids that come up there, sixth grade kids for their yearly camp. And then there was time dedicated for kids with muscular dystrophy.
Oh, wow.
And I had never been exposed to kids with medical conditions before.
Hmm.
And it completely changed my life.
Oh, boy.
And I had one of those like almost
Epiphanies.
ethereal aha
Yeah.
moments
Yeah.
where I realized I wanted to somehow be a part of helping this segment of society get to a better spot. I didn't know exactly in what way or in what fashion, but I just wanted to be part of it. And so I ultimately found my why, and I went back to school, and I had to back up in order to go forward.
Yeah.
So I had to start out with really basic classes. I remember the first quarter I went back, I took Math 99, which is basically arithmetic.
That's right.
And then built my way up. And then ultimately, actually, I earned a biology departmental scholarship for the University of Utah, which is very rare to give out one a year.
Wow.
And I also became a teaching assistant for anatomy. And those two things together really gave me the confidence I think I needed at the time.
That's a great story. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's really interesting. Yeah, I'm always interested in how people get into the roles they're in or their professions, and it's like similarly, I had a really strange way of getting into what I'm doing today.
Oh,
I would
yeah?
have never written that. Yeah, would have never thought I'd be doing what I'm doing today. So
Yeah.
it turned out to be an entrepreneur, and I was a writer by trade. So can put those two things together. Just
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
makes no sense, right? Well, that's great. And when you think about you're building your organization now, building your own company, what are your top priorities over the next 24 months?
I feel strongly about putting the right people at the table and then crafting a culture where everybody feels valued and it's clear that they contribute significantly to the overall effort. I've been part of organizations and part of teams that didn't have that. And it just takes away your motivation to get up in the morning and to move forward. So I feel really strongly about setting the tone where I'm not always going to agree with everybody, but I'm going to hear everybody. And folks who are on my team are going to know they're going to be at least heard, and we're going to have an honest, transparent conversation. And in my mind, it's an ideaocracy, right? Let's have a good, honest conversation. Let's let the best idea float to the top versus, politics and the rest of that jazz. So I feel strongly about building strong teams. I also feel that in order to really develop the team and the organization, you have to deliver value consistently. So whether I'm doing a formal consultation with a healthcare company or whether, and this happens a lot, as you might imagine, people just call me up and say, "Hey, I'd love to pick your brain on this topic. Can we talk?" And I routinely share time with folks because we're all trying to make this place, better.
Right.
Right. So I think the combination of building strong teams, having a good workflow in place, and then ultimately being good at sharing your thoughts and ideas with others really helps you get to the right spot.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. You mentioned ideas. You mentioned sort of the concept of a meritocracy, which I love.
Yeah.
And transparency is so critical as you build cultures. Without transparency, it's so hard to have a strong foundation.
Yeah.
So it's so important. Are you hiring right now as you build out your organization, or?
I've got 4 people on board right now, so it's a small team.
Mhm.
We're doing primarily project management around the types of things I mentioned before. And so as the number of projects increase, I will definitely be hiring.
It's always interesting to talk to another entrepreneur because there's so many things I'm sure that are in your head at once. I know I go to sleep and I dream about, the problems I'm trying to solve, the job,
Yes.
the company, the culture, et cetera. What keeps you up at night?
Two things come to the top. The first is cybersecurity. You can't be a CIO or have been a CIO and not constantly think about who is going to enter in a way you hadn't thought of,
Right.
or maybe a way you did think of, but you weren't guarding the gate. And so I'm constantly thinking about how are bad actors thinking through how to strategize on this. And I've taken an approach with the systems I've been CIO at, where I can't afford to throw billions and billions of dollars at this
Right.
problem.
Mhm.
So my goal really is to try to be not tempting to an outside bad actor.
Mhm.
And, as the saying goes, you don't have to be faster than the bear.
Yeah,
It's got to be faster than the next guy getting chased by the bear.
That's right.
Right. So I'm always trying to get our system in a position where if I'm a bad actor, I'm looking at a bunch of health systems
Yeah.
or companies to attack. Gosh, that one looks like they're pretty well fortified. I'm not going to waste my time.
Mhm.
And so that is top of mind. The second definitely comes back to the concept of focusing on the patient. I feel like with all the technology that has been rolled out over the last, let's say, 15 years, what has been forgotten or has at least been only gratuitously mentioned has been the patient. And I have friends and family who've been patients, even recently, and universally, the experience within healthcare is poor for patients.
But poor and getting worse, it seems like.
Yes.
I've experienced the same thing. It's
So
what's going
clunky.
on? Like, I have never seen it like this.
It's so clunky. It's so disjointed. It's so disconnected. Dr. A doesn't know what Dr. B said. Dr. A
Right.
and Dr. B are fighting with one another over what to do. And the patient's the middle person between those two.
Yeah.
You can't get your medical records. The radiologist who's trying to just read a CT scan to give a reasonable answer can't get the comparison image from 6 months ago
Right.
so they can give an actual reasonable read. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And I think, my personal opinion on this is that the complexity of this is so complex that we've missed an opportunity to cohesively and collectively pull together a general framework that we could all agree upon and at least have that basic framework in place. I feel like we've allowed too many kind of independent standards organizations to kind of thrive and do their thing without really saying, okay, let's all come to the table. Like it's going to be 110 volt. You're going to plug it in the wall
Mhm.
and it's going to be horizontal or vertical. And we're going to be clear on that. And we're all going to use the same thing. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, let's go back to the basics. Let's consider the blocking and tackling that used to work. Why have we made it so complex for people?
Yeah.
Which is really, really interesting. I hope 2024 will bring that to the industry because certainly we could use it.
I think the systems or the companies that are able to do that to some small degree
Mhm.
and showcase the value, the revenue value to having done that will be the ones that will be successful.
Yeah.
I think the ones that are automating, in the beginning, it was all about, can we do this?
Yeah.
And now we should be asking, should we do this? And frequently along any workflow you're talking about, a fraction or a portion of it should be automated. And there's probably a fraction or portion of it where there should be a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to step back and say, what's automatable, if that's a word, and what should include a human being. I mean, the example I would give is you only have to get caught in a phone tree one time where the 9 choices they give you, none of which apply to your situation, and they don't give you 0, talk to the operator as an option.
That's another, that's
I'm
another
sorry, guys,
industry that's gone. Exactly. Oh, that's so frustrating. Too. You just want to talk to, can I just option here out of this circular hell? No, great point. And how do you think about Amazon in all of this?
I think they can do a lot of interesting things. I think they have experimented with various elements of healthcare delivery, and I think they've brought the wrong people to the table. Frankly, I think honestly, you need a clinician who actually also understands technology to be at the forefront of leading these things. And instead, we're getting one of two things. You're either getting a clinician who really does not understand technology on any level, or you get a technician who doesn't understand the clinical side. But in order to be effective, you really need that person who understands both sides of the coin to lead the effort. And I think when they eventually do that, and they will, I believe, come to that conclusion, then I think the world's their oyster.
Yeah. And so what do you think? They acquire maybe a large provider or a medium-sized provider and build from there?
I think they need to bring in individual leaders who have that experience. There's probably 24 MD CIOs across the country. I think that's what they need to bring in. Bring in a Chris Longhurst, bring in a Michael Pfeffer, bring in Mark Wiseman, bring in some of these guys who have seen both sides of this, understand technology well, but are authentic in their understanding of how to deliver healthcare,
pragmatic,
and open to how to do it better.
Tough couple of years with the pandemic. Yeah. Looking back this year, what are you personally and professionally most proud of?
With the last system I was with, we had, when I walked into the organization, there was significant amount of downtime, unplanned downtime within the organization. And it was due to, 18 different things. It wasn't like you could just point to one thing, but primarily there wasn't a clear roadmap for how to do standard work within the organization. And so after making some adjustments to the team and trying to get the right team on board and creating the culture we were talking about before, which, by the way, started with creating a daily stand-up.
I love that. Agile.
Oh, man, the daily stand-up was so critical because it forced people to talk. And, frequently when teams are not performing well, they tend to silo.
That's right.
And information hoard. And so getting folks to talk was key. And I had just 3 elements of that in place. The first was I would literally go around and ask each person, are there any fires in your domain? We would go from domain to domain to domain. And once that was done, then I had a Kanban board, and the Kanban board was for non-project work that we needed to do.
Right.
And each lane was a separate lane. And so we would go through the Kanban board. And then lastly, I would ask everybody, again, one by one, anything for, I would call it roundtable, anything for roundtable. And that gave folks a chance to, first of all, raise the flag if there is a fire. Number 2, clarify any ongoing work that needed to be clarified beyond projects. And number 3, share things with their peers that needed to be shared. And what it did is it took away the ability to say, I don't have an opportunity to share. Because every day you're at the table, we're talking. So, that piece was really huge. But ultimately, between making improvements in hardware, making some upgrade changes, changing our standard workflow, one of the big things we put in place was a best in class, I consider best in class change advisory board.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that any new changes to the production environment had to go through this very rigorous process. And we put in place policies and procedures and even scripting for how to vote on it. So it was very formal. And what ultimately happened was we had a lot of downtime hours. We had in excess of 80 unplanned downtime hours in the months when I first got there. And in my last few months, we were down to 0.
Wow. That's terrific.
Yeah,
Huh.
it was. I'm definitely most proud of that. And the team did a fantastic job. They really pulled together.
And have you checked back? Are they still maintaining that level or?
I don't have numbers. I've had some folks call me and we've had some conversations since then, but yeah, as I was leaving, it was definitely in a good spot.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. So, outside of healthcare, outside of IT, what would you be doing if you weren't doing this job?
I do a lot of things outside of work. So we've got, my wife and I my wife's a PA, a physician assistant, and we have 4 kids, 3 of which go to University of Oregon.
Oh, wow.
And then our youngest is a sophomore in high school.
Okay.
So I spend a lot of time interacting with the kids. And so we talk about academics, talk about their classes, try to support them in that, try to do some tutoring where I can with the kids. But we spend a lot of time outdoors as well. My wife and I hike quite a bit. I also ride, this will sound strange coming from an ER doc, but I ride motorcycles.
I love it.
So
what do you have?
Not a big deal. I have a KLX 300, which is kind of an on-off road. Yeah. And then I have a Kawasaki Vulcan 650.
Oh, nice. The Vulcan.
Which, it's a fun little bike to cruise around town. So, I like to ride motorcycles quite a bit. And
last motorcycle I was on an Indian Chief, and I was heading up to Joshua Tree Park, and and we were if you know Coachella, the area in California where they hold that, and so you're literally as you're approaching the turn to head up to, I think it's Route 10. In the distance, you see this beautiful mountain range and this windmill, these windmills that are basically up on the mountain range. And I remember going to myself, wow, that's a weird place to put the windmills. And all of a sudden we take the turn. It's like being in a tornado, the crosswinds.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we had to stop. We got off, and we went back to the place we rented the bikes. And the guy was like, "Oh yeah, I was waiting for you to call. Usually, we have to send out I don't know, a truck, like to
bring you back
the bikes." And I literally leaped across the counter at him, like, "Why did you let us go out there? Are you insane?" Like, it was probably the worst drive in my life. I was scared to death.
I know that road. And I know that wind. It is unbelievable.
Awful. It is awful. I'm surprised it didn't crash. Like, I was out there with a buddy. We were on a 3-day music fest that they held. It wasn't Coachella, but it was great. 3 days. Stones, Bob Dylan, Neil Young, The Who, Roger Waters. It was fantastic.
That's awesome.
But
so to answer your question, what would I be doing if I wasn't doing this? If I was outside of medicine and outside of technology, I would open a coffee shop.
A coffee shop. Was it the Bob Dylan reference?
But it would have automation in place, but it would also have the human element in place, and it would have the best damn coffee on the planet.
I love coffee. I drink a lot of coffee. I'd be at your coffee shop.
There you go.
Yeah. Excellent. So, go back in time. What would you tell your 20-year-old self?
In my case, I did a lot of things in a really atypical fashion. And ultimately, I think it led to in my case, a richer view of the world. Even I look back at, when I was working for that law firm as a mail boy.
Character building.
Yeah, that. And also, I had a really good manager, and she let me make a whole bunch of changes to how mail was delivered. This is a big law firm. This is 2 stories of a very large office building in downtown San Diego. And I was able to put in place a whole bunch of changes that actually improved the efficiency the delivery of mail.
Your first transformation project.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. No, that's
And
great.
I've drawn from that ever since, those
Yeah.
kinds of things. So I honestly, I think I would say just figure it out.
Yeah, that's
Figure it
figured
out.
out. That's good. That's
You'll figure it out.
yeah. I told you the riskiest thing I've ever done. What's the riskiest thing you've ever done?
I would say when I took over as CIO for the Asante Health System, that was a pretty big risk. That was a pretty big jump. I was CMIO, and their CMIO, there's only one letter difference.
It's a world of difference.
But there's no comparison
Right.
between CMIO and CIO.
That's right. Yeah.
And so that was arguably pretty risky. I had a fantastic CEO at the time who really believed in me. And at the time, I actually negotiated, before I said yes, I negotiated for two things. I negotiated for, I needed a financial person that I wanted to hire, not full-time, but, X number of hours a week, who could help me make sense of the numbers and also present the numbers in a way that could tell a story. Because I knew if I couldn't tell a story, I couldn't get approval.
Right.
And so I wanted to work backward into that and have somebody who could help me do that. And he agreed to the first one. The second one was I asked for a CIO coach. I didn't need it forever, but I thought for the first few months, man, it would be great to have a CIO coach. And he misunderstood. He thought I wanted an executive coach. And I said, I frankly, I've been doing this executive stuff for a while. I don't need an executive coach. I know how to present in front of the board. I know how to, frame things up for folks. I know how to navigate the crazy politics. I'm fine with that. But I needed somebody who's actually been in the CIO saddle before, who could help me navigate this. And he agreed to that as well. And that proved to be key in the success that we enjoyed at Asante, because for two reasons. One, I could run things past him, and if I got it wrong, he could tell me. But the second thing was, a lot of the ideas, frankly, most of the ideas were exactly on target. But I knew they would be controversial with my staff or with the organization. But when I ran it past the CIO coach, he could give me his feedback. And at that time, I could walk in with a level of confidence about this pathway that I never would have had I not had the opportunity to share that with the coach first. So it ended up being a really important element of it.
That's great. I thought you were going to say something about scaling Zion or.
Yeah, no, I've done a fair amount of that as well. This summer I was in Spain with my daughter, who's 18, and then my son, who's now 20. What's that?
Did you do the walk? The
Camino?
Yeah.
No, I didn't do the Camino, but I took the bullet train from Madrid down to Valencia. And then south of Valencia, there's a little area down there that has some great climbing on the cliffs overlooking the Mediterranean. And my son and my daughter and I got in some very precarious scenarios. At one point, she said, "I think we're going to die, Dad." And I said, "Okay, just one step at a time, one handhold at a time. We're going to get this." And we made our way out. So maybe that's the most scary thing I've done.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, scary and cool at the same time.
Yeah.
That must have been picturesque and the beauty and the fear at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. Mixed emotions.
So speaking of islands, you're on a desert island. What's the top 5 albums or movies you'd bring with you?
It would be, there's 3 that come to mind. The Natural.
Oh, good pick.
An oldie but a goodie.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Rocky 2.
Not 1. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And Field of Dreams.
Wow. Very common themes across the 3.
Yeah, definitely.
Field of Dreams is phenomenal. What a great movie that is.
And then in terms of albums, I would say Peter Gabriel, So.
I think it's just like an anniversary, was it this year?
Was it?
50th or 40th anniversary or something. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. U2, Joshua Tree.
Great album.
I just saw them, by the way, perform Achtung Baby in the Sphere.
At the Sphere? You were there at the Sphere?
I was there. And I had, you're gonna hate this. I had the best seats in the house, and they were actually really cheap because I was not organized.
Yeah.
I waited to the last minute. My wife thought I bought them. I thought she bought them. And then I said, "Hey, do you got the tickets?" And she goes, "I thought you had the tickets." So I scrambled, went on a Ticketmaster, and these tickets that were $1,500 a pop, at that point were down to $275.
Whoa.
And so I snagged them, and it turned out they were the best seats in the house. We got lucky.
Wow. Was it like awesome. A couple weeks ago or like 4 weeks ago?
Yeah, it was maybe 4 weeks ago.
Yeah. A good friend of mine was there too. She posted it all on Facebook. I'm like, this looks awesome.
Yeah, it was right before they were preparing for the race. It was the Formula One race?
Yeah.
Or Grand Prix. I can't remember. I don't follow racing, so I don't know. But that was a mess. Las Vegas Boulevard was an absolute mess.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a good show. That's a good show. Any other bands or any other albums?
I think anything by Def Leppard.
You have good taste. That's why I was probing.
Yeah.
What else is behind the curtain?
Oh, the other big one. Sorry, the other big one would be Don Henley. I'm a big Don Henley fan.
Don Henley. Oh, Eagles too, or?
Yeah, I love Eagles too. I mean, Don Henley he's kind of a little bit odd in his later years, but some of his music was just ridiculous. It was so good. He had honed his skills with the Eagles and then took it to the,
great storytelling.
Next step.
Yeah, really great story.
Boys of Summer, forget about it.
Summer's a great song.
So good.
Yeah, I always forget which songs are Don Henley songs or which ones are the Eagle songs because when
he's got a song called A Month of Sundays. And it comes right after a song called Sunset Grill. Or actually right before Sunset Grill.
Yeah.
On the I think it's Building the Perfect Beast album.
I'll check that out.
Man, really good.
You like country?
I like some.
Yeah.
I like some. Should Have Been a Cowboy. It's a pretty good one.
Check out Zach Bryan. If you do you know him, Zach Bryan?
What's his name?
Zach Bryan. He's new.
Zach Bryan. Okay.
Yeah, he's like all the kids. My kids feed me with new songs, new music.
I love that when they do that.
I do too. Like Noah Kahan is another one I just learned about, and Noah Kahan is amazing. It's like this generation's Bob Dylan, if you will.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So, okay. Anyway. I'll check him out. Thanks.
All right. Great. So we're just about wrapping up. We went a little long, but any advice to folks that are starting their career in IT or maybe cybersecurity?
Yeah, I would say for both, I think it's critically important to understand the underlying business that you are attempting to augment with your technology or your cybersecurity. So it's critically important to understand what problems the operators are attempting to solve, and then be a partner with them in attempting to solve that. Historically, and I think this is low-hanging fruit, right? Because I think historically, cybersecurity folks in particular have a reputation for focusing on cybersecurity at the expense of the business. And I think there is a portion of cybersecurity folks, analysts and CISOs alike, who really understand the business and are attempting to augment the business in a safe fashion. And they partner and they provide choices to folks. So I think if you can be seen as someone with that intelligence, where you really understand the business and you're looking to augment it with the security or the technology, and you need their help in order to be able to get it right, boy, you will be seen as somebody who stands out in the crowd.
Excellent. We've been talking to Lee Milligan today. This is Ed Gaudet from the Risk Never Sleeps podcast. And remember, if you're on the front lines protecting patient safety and delivering patient care, remember to stay vigilant because risk never sleeps.